The boy looked like he belonged in a different world. That was the first thought that crossed my mind when I spotted him sitting alone on a bench near the bus stop. It was almost 7 in the evening, and downtown Chicago was wrapped in the blue-gray light that comes just before nightfall. Most people hurried past without looking twice. I almost did the same. I had spent the entire day teaching third graders, grading spelling tests, and trying to convince one stubborn student that glue was not a food group. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and enjoy a quiet evening. Then I heard the sound. A small sniffle. Soft. Fragile. The kind of sound that makes you stop even when you do not want to. I turned and saw him. The little boy could not have been older than 7. Dark hair. Pale skin. Expensive navy coat. Tiny hands clenched in his lap. His eyes were red from crying. My heart sank immediately. Children should not look that worried. I approached carefully. "Hey there," I said gently. "Are you okay?" He looked up at me but did not answer. His lower lip trembled slightly. The city noise seemed to fade around us. "Did you get separated from someone?" I asked. Still nothing. Then I noticed the watch. At first I thought it was some toy designed to look fancy, but when the streetlight caught the polished metal, I realized it was real. Very real. I was not an expert on luxury watches, but even I could tell it cost more than everything inside my apartment combined. The sight of it felt completely wrong. Lost children did not usually wear watches worth thousands of dollars. The boy followed my gaze and immediately pulled his sleeve over it. That tiny movement told me 2 things. First, he knew the watch was valuable. Second, someone had taught him to protect it. "What is your name?" I asked. After a long pause, he whispered, "Noah." Relief washed through me. At least he was talking. "Well, Noah, I am Olivia." I sat down beside him, leaving enough space so he would not feel crowded. The evening air carried the scent of rain. Cars moved steadily through the intersection nearby. Noah stared at the ground. "Are your parents looking for you?" Another silence. Then a small nod. "Can you call them?" He shook his head. His fingers tightened around the edge of the bench. I noticed they were trembling. Whatever had happened, he was scared. Really scared. Not because he was in danger. Because he was alone. I knew that feeling. "How about we get something warm to drink?" I suggested. "There is a diner across the street." Noah hesitated before nodding. Together we stood. As we started walking, I noticed something strange. A black SUV slowly rolled past the intersection. Then another. The vehicles did not stop. They simply continued down the road. Yet every instinct told me they were searching for something. Or someone. I glanced at Noah. He had gone completely still. His eyes followed the SUVs until they disappeared around the corner. Then he looked up at me and whispered words that made my stomach tighten. "They are looking for me." Noah took a hesitant step forward, glancing up at me with wide, tearful eyes. I held out my hand, trying to offer reassurance without pushing too fast, and he slowly reached for it, fingers trembling slightly as he let me guide him toward the small diner across the street. The warm glow from the windows contrasted sharply with the chill outside, and I felt a small sense of relief as we entered. The bell above the door jingled softly, and the familiar smell of coffee and fried food enveloped us. Noah sank into a booth, hugging his arms around himself while I slid into the seat across from him. "What is your favorite kind of breakfast?" I asked gently, trying to distract him from the fear that lingered in his expression. He whispered something about pancakes and I nodded, signaling the waitress for 2 orders, making sure to give Noah a little space, letting him feel safe. Every so often, he glanced toward the door, eyes wide, scanning the street as if expecting someone to appear, and I could not help but notice the expensive watch peeking out from under his sleeve, still a puzzle in the back of my mind. I decided not to mention it, focusing instead on keeping him calm, chatting about school and what cartoons he liked, anything to make him smile even for a second. As we waited for the food, black SUV passed slowly along the street outside, headlights reflecting on the wet pavement, and Noah flinched, gripping the edge of the table. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It is okay, you are safe here," I whispered. The words seemed to settle him, just a little, though his eyes continued to dart toward the windows every few seconds. Finally, the food arrived, and the smell alone seemed to coax a small laugh out of him, the first genuine sound I had heard since I found him. We ate slowly, and I learned that his parents were supposed to pick him up hours ago, but he had gotten separated and had no idea where to go. I listened carefully, nodding, keeping my voice calm, offering simple guidance and comfort. Outside, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle, and the city lights shimmered on the wet asphalt. The diner's warm interior felt like a bubble of safety, a small sanctuary amid the city chaos. Noah began to relax, leaning slightly toward me, sharing small stories about school and his favorite games. I smiled and encouraged him gently, giving him words of reassurance, letting him know it was okay to feel scared, and that I would help him find his way home. Every now and then, he peeked out the window, the distant sound of engines or the glint of headlights reminding him of the uncertainty outside. Yet he chose to remain in the warmth and light of the diner. I realized then how much trust he was placing in me, how fragile and precious it was, and how responsible I felt to guide him safely back to where he belonged. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside this small diner, we created a brief moment of calm, a fragile connection formed through care, attentiveness, and the simple act of helping a lost little boy navigate a world that suddenly seemed overwhelming and unknown. By the time we finished our pancakes, the city outside had settled into the quiet hum of early evening traffic, yet the faint echo of those black SUVs lingered in my mind. Noah pushed his plate away, fingers sticky with syrup, and looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "I do not know where to go," he admitted softly, and my heart tightened at the vulnerability in his voice. I held his gaze, speaking gently. "Then we will figure it out together, okay?" He nodded, slowly trusting me in ways that words could not capture. I fished out my phone and opened a map, but even the technology felt inadequate for the task. Noah could not remember a street name, and the only clue he could offer was his father's name, Vincent. I frowned, realizing how little information we truly had. Meanwhile, the city lights reflected off the wet asphalt outside, creating streaks of gold and silver across the window panes, and I could not help but feel the tension in the air. Something more than just a lost child, some unseen urgency pressing on us from outside. Noah fidgeted, and I gently took his hands in mine, trying to convey safety without imposing. "Do you remember anything else? Any landmark, your home? Anything that might help?" I asked quietly. He shook his head again, lips trembling, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Then the diner door jingled and my heart skipped a beat, not knowing what to expect. A shadow moved past the window outside, just for a moment, and the SUV glinted faintly in the reflection of the glass, tires crunching over the wet pavement. Noah flinched, squeezing my hands tighter, and I whispered reassurance, trying to keep calm for both of us. "Noah, look at me," I said softly. "You are safe here. We will not let anything happen to you." The boy hesitated, then slowly relaxed, leaning slightly against me, trusting in the promise carried in my words. I realized then that his vulnerability was matched by an unexpected strength, the small, stubborn pulse of courage in his chest that refused to surrender completely to fear. I reached for my coat and draped it lightly over his shoulders, the fabric damp but comforting, creating a fragile shield against the unknown outside. Every so often, a car passed, headlights slicing across the diner floor, and Noah's gaze flickered instinctively toward the window, a silent reminder of the world we had not yet conquered, the uncertainty that still lingered beyond the walls. We talked in low whispers about favorite games, animals, and school, each word, each story a small bridge across the chasm of fear and confusion. In that soft, crowded warmth I could feel the bond forming, delicate but growing, a tether strong enough to guide us through the coming uncertainty. Outside, the city carried on oblivious to our small, quiet struggle, and I understood that this was only the beginning. A night that had started with a single lost child had already begun reshaping the paths of everyone involved, and I could feel, deep in my chest, that someone powerful was watching somewhere, waiting to step into the story and shift everything once more. The moment the diner door jingled again, I felt a wave of tension ripple through me, though I had no idea what awaited us. Noah stiffened in his seat, glancing toward the entrance with wide eyes, gripping the edge of the table as if holding onto a lifeline. The city outside had begun to darken further, the early evening deepening into a dusky blue, streetlights flickering on one by one. I followed Noah's gaze and saw a black SUV slide slowly to a stop near the curb. Its sleek surface reflected the dim lights and glimmers that made my chest tighten instinctively. Then the door opened and a tall figure stepped out, commanding even in stillness. I froze for a brief second, my breath catching in my throat, the diner's warmth suddenly contrasting sharply with the sudden presence of someone whose aura seemed to quiet the room. The man's dark, tailored suit and polished shoes suggested authority, wealth, and precision, and though he did not raise his voice, I felt an almost magnetic pull of attention toward him. Noah's hand twitched in mine and I squeezed it gently, whispering reassurance without taking my eyes off the figure, trying to gauge his intentions. As he moved closer, his eyes scanned the diner, and when they met mine, the room seemed to shrink around us, the background blurring as the intensity of his gaze fixed on our small booth. For a moment I thought he might have been here for the boy, but there was something else in the way he observed the space, his head tilting slightly as if assessing the environment and our reactions. Noah pressed closer to me, shyly yet clinging to the reassurance I offered, and I realized how delicate this balance was. One wrong movement could startle him completely. The man approached our table and finally spoke, his voice calm and measured, carrying the weight of authority yet tinged with a quiet warmth that made my muscles relax fractionally. "Is this your son?" he asked, glancing at Noah. The boy nodded, and I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension flooding me. The man crouched slightly to meet Noah's eyes, his tone softening, almost coaxing. Noah's small lips parted in surprise and tentative recognition, and a flicker of a smile crossed his face for the first time that evening. I watched as the dynamic shifted, understanding that this was the father, the figure responsible for the black SUVs, the one whose presence could change everything. There was no threat in his demeanor, only precision, quiet power, and careful attention. He gently nodded toward me, acknowledging the role I had played in keeping his son safe, and in that simple gesture, I understood that a connection had formed. It was a delicate, fragile bond built on trust, observation, and the unspoken recognition of responsibility, linking all three of us in that small, warmly lit diner as the city moved around us, unaware of the quiet significance of this encounter. For a few seconds nobody moved. The sounds of the diner returned slowly around me, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of conversations, the hiss of a coffee machine somewhere behind the counter. Yet all my attention remained fixed on the man standing beside our booth. Noah looked up at him with a mixture of relief and hesitation, as though he wanted to run into his arms but was still recovering from the fear of being lost. The man seemed to understand immediately. He did not rush forward. He did not overwhelm the boy with questions. Instead, he simply crouched beside the table and offered a calm smile. "You gave everyone quite a scare tonight," he said gently. Noah lowered his head. "Sorry." The man's expression softened. "The important thing is that you are safe." I watched the exchange carefully. Whatever I had expected from the mysterious owner of those black SUVs, it was not this. There was no anger, no impatience, only relief. The man finally stood and extended a hand toward me. "Vincent Moretti." His voice was steady and confident. I shook his hand. "Olivia Parker." His grip was firm but respectful. "Thank you for staying with him." The sincerity in his tone caught me off guard. "He was scared," I answered. "I could not just leave him alone." Vincent studied me for a moment, as though trying to understand something beyond my words. Then he nodded once. "Most people would have called someone and walked away." I glanced toward Noah. "Most people did." The boy looked up at me and smiled faintly. Something in Vincent's expression changed when he saw that smile. It was subtle, almost impossible to notice. Yet I saw it. Relief, gratitude, maybe even surprise. As if his son had not smiled like that in a long time. One of the men waiting near the entrance approached quietly and spoke a few words to Vincent. I could not hear them. Vincent listened, then gave a brief nod. The man immediately stepped away. The entire interaction lasted less than 10 seconds, but it revealed something important. People listened when Vincent spoke. Not because they had to, because they trusted his decisions. Noah suddenly reached for my sleeve. "Do you have to go?" he asked. The question surprised me. "Eventually," I said with a small laugh. "I have school tomorrow." His face fell immediately. Vincent noticed. Of course he noticed. He seemed to notice everything. "You are a teacher?" he asked. 3rd grade. A faint smile touched his face. That explains a great deal. Before I could ask what he meant, the waitress arrived with the check. I reached for it automatically. So did Vincent. Our hands stopped at the same moment. Please, he said. Allow me. I shook my head. I invited Noah inside. I can handle pancakes. For the first time, a genuine smile appeared on his face. Not the polite smile from before. A real one. Brief. Warm. Unexpected. Then thank you, he said quietly. The simple words carried more weight than they should have. Outside, rain continued tapping softly against the windows. The city lights shimmered across the wet streets. Noah looked from Vincent to me and back again. Then he wrapped his small arms around my side without warning. The hug lasted only a second, but it completely stole my breath. Thank you for staying, he whispered. My heart tightened instantly. I hugged him back. When I looked up again, Vincent was watching us. His expression was unreadable. Yet there was something in his eyes I could not quite define. Something thoughtful. Something that made me feel as though this night was not ending at all. It was only beginning. The rain had almost stopped by the time we finally left the diner. Tiny droplets still clung to the sidewalks, turning the city lights into long ribbons of gold and silver across the pavement. Noah walked between us, holding my hand with one hand and Vincent's with the other. The sight should have felt strange. Instead, it felt oddly natural. For a brief moment, it looked less like a chance encounter, and more like something that had always been meant to happen. When we reached the curb, several black SUVs waited quietly nearby. Their headlights glowed against the damp street, and a few well-dressed men stood at a respectful distance. Nobody rushed forward. Nobody interrupted. Everything around Vincent seemed to move with calm precision. Noah suddenly stopped walking. Can Olivia come with us? He asked. I blinked in surprise. Vincent glanced down at his son. It is late. Please. Noah insisted. Just for a little while. The hopeful look on his face made my heart ache. Vincent studied him for a second before looking at me. Only if you are comfortable. The choice was entirely mine. There was no pressure in his voice. Yet curiosity stirred inside me. Tonight had already become the most unexpected night of my year. Part of me wanted to understand more about the mysterious father standing beside me. Another part wanted to make sure Noah felt secure after everything that had happened. A little while, I agreed. Noah's face immediately brightened. The smile that followed seemed to affect Vincent more than anyone else. A quiet warmth appeared in his expression before disappearing almost instantly. The ride across the city felt surreal. Noah sat beside me in the back seat, talking about school projects and favorite books while the skyline drifted past outside the windows. Vincent listened from across from us, speaking only occasionally, yet somehow always knowing exactly when Noah needed encouragement or reassurance. Watching them together changed something inside me. The powerful man from the diner faded slightly. In his place, I saw a father trying his best to raise a child he clearly adored. 20 minutes later, the vehicles turned through a pair of iron gates and entered a sprawling estate overlooking the lake. My breath caught. The property looked like something from a movie. Elegant stone architecture, perfectly maintained gardens, warm lights glowing through enormous windows. Yet despite its size, it did not feel cold. It felt lived in. Comfortable. Home. Noah practically bounced from the vehicle the moment we arrived. Come see my room, he announced before anyone could stop him. I laughed despite myself. Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings. Beautiful woodwork. Shelves lined with books. Yet what caught my attention most were the photographs. Pictures of Noah. Pictures of family moments. Smiles. Vacations. Birthdays. They covered the walls like reminders that beneath all the wealth and influence was simply a family. While Noah raced upstairs to retrieve something he desperately wanted to show me, Vincent and I remained alone in the foyer. The sudden quiet felt different. More personal. He slipped his hands into his pockets and looked toward the staircase where Noah had disappeared. I have not seen him this happy in months, he said quietly. The honesty in his voice surprised me. He is a wonderful kid, I replied. Vincent nodded slowly. And you made him feel safe. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The distance between strangers seemed smaller now. Then footsteps thundered down the stairs as Noah returned carrying a drawing clutched tightly in both hands. He stopped in front of me and proudly held it up. 3 stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. One was labeled Noah. One was labeled Dad. The third figure had a simple name written beneath it. Olivia. My heart stopped for just a second as I stared at the drawing. Then Noah smiled and said the words neither Vincent nor I were prepared to hear. Now everybody is together. The days following that evening passed in a blur of schoolwork, quiet routines, and the occasional glimpse of Noah's boundless energy as he shared stories from his day. Olivia found herself thinking about the house, the estate, and Vincent Moretti far more often than she expected. The image of the father and son standing together etched into her mind. Each evening, Noah insisted she accompany him for a short walk around the estate grounds, and Olivia agreed, finding comfort in the small familiarity it provided. Vincent would occasionally join from a distance, observing quietly without intrusion, his presence commanding yet surprisingly unobtrusive. One late afternoon, a gentle breeze moved through the manicured gardens, and Noah ran ahead, calling out with laughter as he explored. Olivia followed, keeping a careful watch on him, and Vincent followed behind at a measured pace. The sky was painted in the deep golds and muted purples of sunset, casting long shadows across the lawn, the light catching in Vincent's dark hair and the crisp lines of his tailored suit. Olivia could not help but notice the care in his movements, the subtle attentiveness he showed toward his son, and the way he observed her interactions with Noah without speaking. There was a silent communication, an understanding, as if he were acknowledging the role she had taken in Noah's life, and the quiet impact of her presence. As they reached the edge of a small pond, Noah stopped, crouched, and began skipping stones, the ripples catching the sunlight in a dance of reflections. Olivia sat nearby on a low stone wall, watching him, and Vincent settled on the bench across from her, arms resting casually on the backrest, gaze calm yet penetrating. He said nothing at first, merely observing, and the silence was filled with an odd sense of intimacy and trust, as though no words were necessary. Eventually he spoke, voice low and measured. "You are patient with him," he noted. "More than I expected." Olivia smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He needs stability," she replied, "and he trusts easily when he feels safe." Vincent nodded slowly, a subtle acknowledgement of the truth in her words, and for a moment, his usual composure softened just enough to reveal the man beneath the public persona. They sat in a comfortable silence, the gentle sound of water lapping at the pond and Noah's occasional laughter punctuating the evening. Over the next few hours, Vincent allowed Olivia to become increasingly involved in Noah's routines, guiding them together with small gestures of encouragement and support. Each interaction deepened the bond among the three of them, the quiet authority of Vincent balanced by Olivia's warmth and patience. By the time night fell and the first stars appeared overhead, Olivia realized that her perspective on both father and son had changed profoundly. She no longer saw Vincent simply as a powerful, distant figure. She recognized the depth of his dedication, his protective instincts, and the subtle ways he allowed her presence to shape their small family unit. The evening ended with Noah hugging her tightly, whispering a heartfelt thank you, and Vincent standing a short distance away, hands in pockets, silently acknowledging the beginning of a connection that promised to grow stronger with every passing day. Over the following days, Olivia noticed subtle changes in both Noah and the household routine. Noah began arriving home from school with brighter eyes, sharing small victories, and displaying a confidence that had been absent before. He proudly showed her homework, recited poems he had learned, and spoke more openly about his friends, all while clinging to the security he felt in her presence. Olivia observed from the kitchen or the living room, offering gentle encouragement and listening patiently, understanding that her attention and support were slowly helping him regain his sense of stability. Vincent, ever watchful, maintained a careful balance between involvement and distance, allowing Olivia to take a leading role in these moments while he supervised from a discreet vantage point. One afternoon, as the sunlight streamed through the large windows, Olivia and Noah worked on an art project at a small table, mixing colors and laughing at the unexpected results of their experiments. Vincent lingered near the edge of the room, arms crossed casually, observing silently but with a softening gaze that betrayed his appreciation for the care Olivia was providing. Later, when Olivia ventured into the kitchen to prepare snacks, she noticed Vincent moving quickly to handle a small scheduling conflict involving Noah's school activities, smoothing over a problem without drawing attention, ensuring everything ran smoothly for both the boy and Olivia. Each interaction reinforced a sense of calm, security, and mutual respect within the household, a delicate rhythm forming between father, son, and the woman who had unexpectedly become part of their lives. Evening fell, and the soft glow of interior lighting contrasted with the darkening sky outside, painting warm reflections across polished floors and furniture. Noah curled up on the sofa with a book, occasionally glancing toward Olivia as she tidied the room, offering a smile or a whispered question. Vincent moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights that shimmered on the wet streets below, his posture relaxed but alert, a silent protector maintaining a watchful eye on the world beyond while recognizing the value of the life unfolding within. As dinner concluded, Olivia realized that the bonds forming between her, Noah, and Vincent were deeper than she had anticipated. Noah's laughter now felt genuine and unburdened, a testament to the safe environment she had helped nurture, and Vincent's occasional words of affirmation or guidance created a delicate framework of trust and respect. The evening wound down with a quiet calm, Noah asleep in his bed, and Olivia sitting in the living room reflecting on the events of the past week. She understood that her presence had altered the household dynamic in subtle but meaningful ways, providing support and stability where it had been absent, and Vincent had demonstrated a silent gratitude through both his protective instincts and careful attention. In that stillness she recognized the delicate, growing harmony between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of trust, appreciation, and the beginnings of a connection that extended beyond simple circumstance, hinting at the profound impact a single act of kindness could have on a life. A week later, the city was wrapped in the soft glow of an early autumn evening. Golden leaves drifted across the sidewalks outside, and the lake reflected the fading sunlight like polished glass. Olivia stood on the terrace overlooking the water, a warm cup of tea cradled between her hands. The past few weeks felt almost unreal. A chance encounter had slowly transformed into something far more meaningful, and every day since had brought a new reminder of how profoundly lives could change when kindness appeared at exactly the right moment. Behind her, laughter echoed from the garden. Noah was chasing a remote-controlled airplane across the lawn, his excitement carrying through the evening air. The difference in him was impossible to ignore. The uncertainty and fear she had seen that first night had been replaced by confidence, curiosity, and joy. Watching him now felt like witnessing a flower finally receive sunlight after too many cloudy days. Olivia smiled to herself before turning toward the sound of approaching footsteps. Vincent stepped onto the terrace, hands resting comfortably in the pockets of his dark coat. The city skyline stretched behind him in shades of gold and blue, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Silence had become easy between them. Comfortable. Familiar. Vincent glanced toward Noah before looking back at Olivia. He has changed. The quiet sincerity in his voice made her smile. He was always there. He just needed time. Vincent nodded slowly. And someone who believed in him. The words lingered between them. Olivia lowered her eyes briefly. Children deserve that. Vincent studied her expression for a moment. So do adults. The answer caught her off guard. For a second she found herself unable to respond. The evening breeze moved gently through the terrace, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant water. Down below, Noah waved excitedly before returning to his game. Vincent followed the movement with his eyes. Do you know what he told me yesterday? Olivia shook her head. A faint smile appeared on Vincent's face. He said he hopes you never leave. Her heart tightened instantly. She looked out toward the lake, trying to process the unexpected emotion rising in her chest. He is a wonderful boy. He is. Vincent paused. But I think he understands something I only realized recently. Olivia turned toward him. Vincent's expression remained calm, yet there was a vulnerability in his eyes she had never seen before. Not weakness. Honesty. The kind that only appears when someone lowers their guard completely. That night, he said quietly, I thought I was searching for my son. Olivia listened carefully. The sounds of the city seemed to fade around them. But somewhere along the way, I realized he was not the only person I was looking for. Emotion caught in her throat. The world felt suddenly still. Noah's laughter drifted up from the garden below like a distant melody. Vincent stepped closer, not enough to invade her space, only enough to make sure she understood every word. You helped a frightened child because it was the right thing to do. You expected nothing in return. His voice softened, and somehow that changed everything. Olivia looked toward the boy playing beneath the evening sky, then back at the man standing before her. For the first time, she fully understood the truth hidden beneath every moment they had shared. It had never been about luck. It had never been about coincidence. One act of kindness had connected 3 lives that desperately needed one another. Noah looked up from the garden and waved both arms enthusiastically. "Come join me," he shouted. Olivia laughed through the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Vincent smiled as well. Together, they walked toward the stairs leading down to the lawn where Noah waited. And as the sun disappeared behind the skyline, Olivia realized something simple but profound. Sometimes the people who change your life do not arrive with grand promises. Sometimes they arrive as a lost child on a quiet city street. And sometimes when you choose kindness, you unknowingly open the door to the family you never expected to find.